right, guys, welcome back to the show. This is Total Disclosure by Pop Culture Corner. I am here today with someone who I've been trying to get in touch with since the early days of the switch over from movies to ufology and just the UFO subject in general. Now, I'm pleased to have on today investigative researcher Linda Thompson, who is part of MUFON. You guys know that I am in the process of becoming an investigator for MUFON. At least I've talked to the Massachusetts director on 3 or 4 occasions. I'm going to their next meeting, and I'll start the process. If I don't end up ever doing it, that's okay. But I definitely want to get involved with it as well as do this. But it's I just love talking to people that investigate these things, because these are the boots on the ground. These are the people that know about the cases that not just the Roswell cases, not just the Rendlesham Forest, not just the Ariel School, but these are the people that know about the around the block UFO incidents. So these are the people that just are a wealth of knowledge, and I'm so excited for tonight. Before we get into it, guys, make sure to smash that like button, share this show across social media with your friends, your family, your grandmother, your father, your enemies. We don't care. We need to get the word out there, and we need to just destigmatize this subject. It is not taboo anymore. It is not taboo. And that is one of the biggest themes and morals. If you want to support the channel further, you can become a member, get early access to podcasts like this, which our members are getting right now for free. So if you want to help out, everything goes back into the channel. It allows me to do lovely things like this. We have an announcement coming up in the near future about something I am doing with a lovely, lovely woman who was on the show named Lorian Fenton. Her and I have something really big in the works, and we can't wait to announce it to you guys. But today, the focus is on my girl, Linda Thompson. Linda, it is an absolute pleasure to be in your presence.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no. It's my pleasure. It is truly. So you're an investigative researcher for MUFON. Now, do you do anything else aside from that, or is this kind of what you do now?
Okay, so I was a researcher for years. I have a paralegal background, so it's kind of built into me. And so then I started doing more of the investigative work with the research. I decided to become a MUFON investigator, which is completely volunteer at
Correct.
your own cost. I decided to do that, and it keeps me busy, but
Yes.
it also helps me with my other research. And so it gives me the scientific background with what I'm doing.
What is the other research?
I'm sorry?
What's the other research?
Okay, well, it's in the UFO military topics, but I also do other research and other things. So
Okay.
I'm working on a scientific project that is involved, kind of connected to ufology, but not really.
Okay.
I'll put it that way.
Put it that way, yeah. Now, you've had a long, illustrious career in, let's call it ufology, right? For lack of a better word. What I usually ask first, and this seems to be a common theme. How did you get interested in UFOs, the paranormal, and otherworldly beings? Because I know for most people, they either have a sighting or something happens, and then they dedicate the rest of their life to trying to find that truth. And, that story is repeated over and over and over and over again. Can you tell us about how you became interested?
Okay. Well, it's all my life. I mean, it was a family thing. It was a personal thing. Sightings, much more than sightings. So it's always an interest.
You can't say much more than sightings and not get into that. Um, so, okay, you know what? No, we'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Well, I mean, it was abductions, sightings. So it turns
Are
out
you
I'm third generation and my granddaughter is fifth generation that we know of. So it could go back further,
of hybridization?
particularly abductions that's involved.
Okay. Now, are you okay with speaking about abductions? Because I hate to use the word abduction, unless of course, you did not want that to happen, right? If you
Well,
don't want that,
when it starts like at tiny child stage and don't really have a whole lot of choice about it.
right?
People talk about the pre-birth contracts, and I just don't get into that,
Okay,
because
okay,
that's something that, you know, it's harder to prove or,
right,
whatever.
right,
So I
right.
try to stay more, I don't know what you want to call it, balanced as far as that part.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't, that's hard to talk to with parents, particularly about
yes.
that topic. So I
Now,
try to be more aware of it.
now, when you were taken, um, have you ever done regression, hypnotic regression, and kind of went back and you know saw or experienced and because you work for MUFON, not work for MUFON, you volunteer for MUFON, so I assume this all led to investigating for MUFON. But did you ever try going back to the time to the place?
Well, that's part of the issue is that there were so many times in so many places. But there was one particular incident where, I mean, I remember a lot of what happened, but as
Would you be
far
able
as,
to would you be
well, and
okay
it's,
sharing that?
yeah, I've shared it several times, but yes. But what specifically happened on this ship, I did not recall.
Okay,
Okay, so
okay.
um, I had regression specifically for that because, you know, I it would I had a lot of issues around the whole incident, and I came to the conclusion that knowing would be better than not knowing because I could make up a lot of things of what could have happened on the ship that were horrible, based on
Right,
what happened around it.
right.
So I got to the point where I just had to know. So I went through regression, which was relaxed meditative
Yep.
state. It was no hypnotic suggestions, anything like that. And so I went through that part, and it turned out that actually happened on the craft was very positive, which I never would have known that without regression.
Right.
And um, so that was positive for me. Now, I will say before that, a few years before that, somebody tried to do like a regressive past life thing with me. And they had to stop because she said, I'm
It
not
was painful.
qualified to do this with you. I can't handle it because he kept
What?
running. kept running into the ETs.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah. And so she's like, "Stop. I'm not trained to handle this." And
So
so yeah.
so she was in a past life, or she was regressing you to find a past life of yours, but the ETs were there, either
Mhm.
what, stopping her, or they were there, you know,
Interacting with me.
interacting with you in a different life. Oh
Right.
my God. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
And so she couldn't do it. So, of course, you know, I was very skeptical of having regression again, and so, like I said, so that happened.
Yes. And so you talked about the 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 positive experience of being on the craft. Now, um, positive, is this now? This leads me to a direction, kind of like Travis Walton, right? Travis
Mhm,
Walton, um, at the time of the abduction, obviously he was scared, he was frightened.
mhm,
He had just been, taken, but
mhm,
he was only taken because he got too close, touched the craft, or supposedly, either was too close to the craft or laid hands on it, um, and was going to die. And they brought him up, fixed him, and fixed the problem, and put him back. It took them a couple days to do so because time works different, most likely inside their ship than it does outside. But that's a positive experience. But as a human, just like a animal in captivity, you're gonna be scared. You're gonna be nervous. You're gonna be freaking out. Um, and it's not until you can come to terms and accept what's really happening that you can
mhm,
be at peace with it.
mhm.
So, you know, was it something similar to that, where they were, giving you knowledge, or were they trying to, you know, check in on you?
Okay, so I have many of the experiences, and I do remember in parts many of them. Okay, this was different because everything about it that I remembered outside of being on the craft was terrifying.
Yeah,
Okay, and bad
yeah.
things happened to me, to my car. I mean, it was just not
Oh my
good.
god.
Okay, so that's why I wanted regression on what actually happened inside. They did a couple of different procedures on me, but one of them specifically was on my foot ankle area, my left foot ankle area. And on in the regression, I was told it was because I had a tumor and they were taking it out, repairing, whatever.
Oh my god.
But they said that I would have trouble walking after that incident because of what had to be done. Okay,
Right.
so that was one of the things. Um, and so I I didn't know. I didn't believe it, you know?
Right, right.
I can't turn that leg to where I can see the outside of my ankle, so I got a mirror, and then I called my
Yeah.
husband and come look at it, and there was a surgical scar that I had no idea I had. I had never
No
had
freaking
surgery
way.
I had never had surgery on that ankle before. And see, I had trouble with that leg before that incident. I had a medical test, and one of the tests showed I had a hot spot in that leg, which is, you know, can be indicative of cancer. So,
Oh,
but I was still going through the process for testing. And so, that just I mean, it was bizarre, and like I said, I had no idea. about that.
Right.
And so, you know, um, so yeah, I have a lot of neuromuscular issues that are the result of that incident specifically. Um, I deal with all the time, but apparently it's better than what I could have gone through. So,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
mean, you could have cancer,
yeah,
some sort of cancer, and that would be terrible, you know. So, do you think that do you think that they are watching you and watching over your bloodline?
definitely.
Now,
Yeah, very protective.
very, very protective. Now, how do I sign up so that I can get that treatment as well?
I don't know that you want the treatment. But yeah, they are very protective. And
Well,
so,
so how does MUFON feel about your experiences? Because MUFON in its later years, um they I mean, so I want to talk about a couple of statistics here, which I've written
mhm,
down. So MUFON, for anyone who doesn't know, it was founded in 1969, specifically May 31st, 1969, in Quincy, Illinois. Back then, it was known as the Midwestern UFO Network. It then grew and chapters were added all across the country and now internationally. They claim to have about 4,000 members. I am one of them. I mean, there's two members right here in this on this show. I pay the money per month. She does too. I'm sorry. Do you go by what? What are your? Do you go by he she? I mean, he she her.
I guess, yeah.
This day and age, everybody's
I
politically
know.
correct. So
Yes.
I gotta you gotta watch out. I don't want to get canceled on anything. Um, so the between their members and investigators, over 4,000 and growing. They have a 92% solve rate. And then there's that 8% that is unexplained. Those are the unexplained. 92% can be explained prosaically or misidentification, so on and so forth. Over 10, if I, did I get this right? Because I did this off of memory. 10,000 sightings per year reported internationally.
Um, I don't know, but I think this year it's gonna be higher. This year has been a high year for sightings.
Can you elaborate on that?
I didn't run any statistics, before the show, but, like, I don't know, like Virginia,
Are you
we've had an
just?
increase.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Are you
Mhm.
noticing in your state and in other states that the reporting is at a higher degree than it's ever been? Is and
Yes.
do you think that correlates with it being in the news all the time now?
I think that's only partial. Um, I think I think the fact that the government is more willing to admit that there's other stuff going on than what, they wanna say, um, like the DNI report last year and
Yeah,
different
yeah.
congressmen coming out talking about it. I think that's opening up, but like several of my cases, the individuals didn't know anything about MUFON, but when they were talking to their cousins or their friends, they said, "Oh, well, you need to report that to MUFON." So that's how, the word is getting out, because, you know, it's not I mean, if it was me I can't speak to headquarters, but I would be running PSAs, public service announcements across the country, especially since we're a nonprofit organization. But, people just aren't aware that we are out there, that they can report it to.
Right. So there is 1,100 volunteers nationwide, 46 international chapters with 4,600 members globally. So almost 5,000 members globally, and 1,100 of those are um, um, in the United States. So, uh, you know, and that's amazing. And this is a nonprofit. And like I said, moral of my story is that most people will have a sighting and then dedicate the rest of their life to searching for answers, for that truth, and for what they saw that day, or for, if a close relative had a sighting that was undeniable, and they were told about it, then they get, there's all these situations. But I find most of the time that people who who are interested in ufology, there's no like there's no like passive interest. It's always like an obsession almost. So what do you say, how did all this transition into investigating for MUFON, and how many cases have you handled in your time as a investigative researcher?
Okay. So I, of course, doing my regular research into the UFO cases and everything military related on my own, I decided that I wanted, and also relating with the experiencers in this, because that's very important to me. I decided that it was important for me to become an investigator so that I could do the scientific protocol, that I would know what is eliminated in the process, that type of thing. But it also gives me access to the database, which is important for my general research. Um, I get to speak to the people in the events and find out from them firsthand what the experience did to them, um, which is important piece of the key. Um, and then it's helped with my research in general because it's a nonprofit scientific organization that is an exemption under FOIA fees. And so I get fees waived, which before I wasn't a news media journalist to be
Right.
able to qualify for that. So this qualifies me under a separate category. And so that helps me immensely to, you know, be able to file the FOIAs.
Yeah. And I myself, and I'm in a similar boat, with what you just said. So I definitely. Do you think that the UAP report, that was just handed in, and should be, well, was there actually a delay, or was it turned in?
I don't know. I don't even like speculating on it since it's not public. Every time you turn around, somebody's saying something different. I
Yeah.
just really wish these agencies would do what they're supposed to do it on time, not play around with it, because
Right.
and not discuss it at all with any news media until it's out,
Right.
and
Right.
I have a huge problem with that. Um, and yeah, and so I'll also add another reason to be a MUFON investigator is the huge network of people that you can network with and to have experts to help, you know, um, they kind of have a military protocol as far as who you talk with in MUFON. But, if I know a drone expert in Canada, I can consult that drone expert. Or if I know of another expert somewhere else, I can consult with them. And so I'm huge on networking people. And so that's another good reason to become a MUFON investigator.
How does one become a MUFON investigator for those who don't know?
Okay, well, you go to the website for MUFON. I think they've added a button now actually for becoming an investigator. If they haven't, you would join MUFON, you would go to the store, purchase the manual. Now, get the manual, don't get the online manual because you're going to need that um, paper manual for a couple of different reasons. You will go through, study, you'll take a test, and then you'll go through MUFON University classes. When you or do all that, then you have like at least 5 cases that you have to do before you become a certified investigator. And then there's ongoing training. So,
Okay. Like further, uh continued development,
right.
and then meetings, and you know uh for volunteer work, um there is a lot that goes into it. It's not just um cut and dry, like once a month you go to an AA meeting. It's 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 very hands on, and I am so because I have a background in investigative, oh, not investigative, but I have a background in journalism. I've always had the ability to put puzzles together that no one else can.
Mhm.
See clues where no one else can, um, and that comes from my um, uh, um, film school stuff. Because as a someone who is making movies, you need to be able to really, really hone in, and be able to use what's in front of you to the best of its ability. And it's just allowed me to really hone in on some of the skills that I think I could bring to the table for MUFON. But moving
Mhm.
past that, you talked about the scientific method. MUFON has been criticized in the past for its focus on what some mainstream scientists call a pseudoscience. Now, we all know that is BS, because this is no longer a pseudoscience, but they claim MUFON investigators fail to use the scientific method. What do you say to that?
I don't know how. I mean, most of these people are clueless about what we are trained in and the ongoing training. I mean, our manual is thick and it's smaller print and it goes through how to use all kinds of different processes, equipment. Um, you know, they have on-site training. For instance, this week coming up, there's going to be a boot camp in Arizona for learning how to be an investigator. Um, and so, there's a process of what we go down. And I know for a fact there are many straight states that are stricter on what is done than other states. Um, I mean, my state is really strict on the protocol that is there. Our reports have to meet, I think, a higher standard than many other reports that I have seen. And so, but it's not what people think. I mean, and this is for sightings, of things in the sky. Very rarely do you have to go on location to investigate a sighting in the sky. Okay. I've gone on location a few times to rule out things that could be involved, to see the specific terrain, to see, you know, what what could have happened or what couldn't have happened just because of visual situations, you know. For instance, if there are a lot of trees or weird light poles or something like that that could have been mistaken or
Like,
blocking or
yeah,
whatever.
light
Yeah,
poles refract
right,
light. Um,
right.
there are many different things, and
Uh,
and that's
and
and that's
and
that's why MUFON is so critical, because they take these cases and
mhm,
they don't mind ruling. They don't mind if something isn't a UFO, because
right,
they want to weed out the explainable.
right. Now, since there's Google Earth Pro, that has helped
What
so much in
what is
investigating.
Google Earth Pro?
Okay, a lot of people use Google Earth. I use the Google Earth Pro because you can do so much more in it. W As far as on-site investigations, you can do it from your computer. A lot of the things that you used to have to go out on site to find out or drive around or whatever, you can now do using Google Earth Pro. And so that it takes care of so much. I can measure distances, aerial distances, which is very critical information. I can zoom down into areas to see, you know, what is there that I couldn't even do on site. And a lot of times, I mean, we can't trespass. We can't go on somebody's property without their permission, written permission, and things like that. So there's a lot of things that we can discover with Google Earth Pro that we couldn't find out even if we went to a site. So
Right.
that's very helpful. There's many, many, many websites that we use for similar things. I
Do you
mean,
have a
even for
drone?
I don't. Um,
Would you
I
like
think
one?
it could I
I'll
have
buy I'll
considered
I'll buy you one.
I have considered using one, particularly, I'll tell you, I had a case in the mountains in a very remote location. And I mean, so remote that even on Google Earth Pro, it was very difficult to find out anything because all the trees in the mountains.
Right.
So that was something that, you know, we kind of laughed about because, you know, and cases like that, and it's really tough to investigate the few cases that we get out in Western Virginia because of accessibility. So, you know, things like that, but it's not like I could use it, like, all the time, you know?
Right, right, right.
Um, but
Drones are great assets. Um, and I feel like, with the terrain that you're in with Virginia, um, a drone could be really, really, really helpful. Um,
yeah,
but then again, flying it, whole different story.
right.
You'd
If
have to
it
get
goes
one.
down
Yeah.
if it goes down in one of those wooded areas, it's just gone.
Yep, yep. And well, no, some most of them have GPS. Um, but you can also there are some where you can map out a flight path, and then
Mm.
bring it back to you. And as long as it has enough battery, it'll film that whole thing. So the DJI Jones will run you like 1,000. Um, but I'd buy you one if you really wanted.
I wouldn't use it enough at this point to justify.
I have like
Uh,
two right over there. Um, uh, eh, but so I want to talk about something that's a little bit touchy
okay.
before we get into some more UFO things. Um, this has to do specifically with MUFON.
Okay.
In 2020, Jan Harz Harz
Tarzan.
Harzan made MUFON look incredibly messy. Do you think the direction the organization is moving in is the right one?
I can't speak to that. I mean,
That's okay. That's okay.
you know, I I just
That's
can't.
it's
I
okay.
mean, yeah, yeah.
Do you have anything to
I
say
mean, if
about? Go ahead.
I think that MUFON needs a younger, um,
I agree. We'll
more
leave it at
professional, more engineering, more scientific board and executive director is my personal opinion, but that's my personal opinion.
yeah, and that's your personal opinion. Again, MUFON is volunteer work. You know, they need people that are younger because it parallels with politics. We need a younger set of Congress people. We need a
Mm,
younger president.
mhm,
We need a young, maybe not a younger president, but not someone in their
mhm,
70s. No offense to anyone who's in their 70s or elderly, but the world has changed drastically, and
mhm.
we need people who understand this new world.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so I'm the youngest investigator in Virginia.
what?
So, yeah.
How
Yeah,
old are you, if you don't mind saying?
I'm 65.
Get out of here! You're like 59.
And so, yeah, I'm much younger than the other investigators. Um,
And in all of Virginia, you're the youngest?
yeah.
Oh my god. Wow.
But see, part of that is also because it's all volunteer and, younger people aren't going to have the time or the money to be able to do this. That's the problem. I went to something with MUFON a couple of weeks ago, and I had several younger people ask me how they can become investigators, and they would have immediately if it was paid. But the fact that it's not paid and, you have to put out expenses and everything, um, you know,
I don't need money. I don't need
o
money.
okay.
And so I want to become an investigator. Um I need help doing that. So
Mhm,
maybe you could tutor me um
mhm,
here and there, along with so Eric Hartwig is the Massachusetts director, and
okay,
I email him consistently, and he doesn't email me back. Um,
okay.
is there a
Well,
way I can go over?
you don't have to do anything with the state director before you become an investigator. You can just go to the site, buy your book, do the test, do all that, and then tell your state investigator, state director, I'm an investigator now, you know, um, and then they have to deal with it.
Right, right.
One of the things is okay, so a lot of these people get all kinds of different inquiries and stuff as directors. A lot of it is not serious. And, that's one of the things our state director says all the time is that I always have people telling me they're going to be investigators and they never follow through. Says, you didn't even tell me that you were going to be an investigator until you got your test and everything finished. And, so that's really the best way to do it.
Well, so is MUFON, are they, do they need, is there a high demand by MUFON for more investigators?
Yes. And I'll tell you another thing is
So
all
what?
this current stuff, the floodgates are opening. We need the people to be ready as investigators to help.
Well, then why charge so much for the book and the test?
Actually, I can't answer that. I do know the book is going to be revised at some point, and it'll probably go up higher then. I think they look at it as,
It's
they
130 right now.
yeah, I wanna say it was, like, maybe 100 when I got it. I think they consider it kinda like a college textbook kinda thing.
Yeah,
Also, a
yeah.
barrier to people
So
who aren't
so
serious.
could I buy a used one?
If you could find one of that type, yes.
Okay. All right, let's move past this because this is more. This is a conversation you and I need to have on the phone.
Yeah,
Um, Not podcast. Fucking part of my language. Um, so I want to know something.
okay.
In, in your professional opinion, do you think the United States government is asking the correct questions? Because most people think that we are way past if they're real or not. And the government, Congress specifically, is still asking, are they real or not? When most people know that it's far more than that. Um, are you excited for things like the UAP report and stuff like that? Or are you just excited because it's becoming, you know, more talked about, more open, destigmatized? But would you rather them start asking the actual questions?
I'm glad to see that we're making progress and that for more and more people, it is destigmatized and more welcome to discuss it. There are people coming forward that absolutely would not have in the past to file reports, to even discuss it. So that's a huge improvement. Um, and so those are big changes. In the past, we didn't have very many Congress people or senators willing to discuss it at all, at all. Um, and so those are positive changes. Our media, I think, is a bigger problem than our politicians at this point. The media doesn't seem to want to discuss it or to continue to make fun of it and to downplay all of it. Our intel and our military people, um, they personally want to discuss it more, to open up more about it. Some of the retired ones who didn't sign NDAs are opening up about it. And so we just need to have all the new legislation passed so we can move on beyond that point and start making more changes and more improvements. So, yes, we need to be able to say, this is what that is. They need to be able to show us things that they are refusing to show right now. Um, you know, in MUFON, the knowns are the highest category, the things that we can't identify. And, sure, there's times we could say, that's a triangle. Sure, that's a triangle. But we can't say who the triangle belongs to. We can't say if it might be advanced, aerospace technology. We can't say who it's from, by whom. Um, and that's the same thing with some other situations. And but the US Intel, they should at least be able to publicly acknowledge these are all the shapes that have been seen, that has been, you know, that should not be classified. I mean, we have all kinds of witness data that we can go by. There's some drawings and designs out on the internet that look very much official. We need the government to say, these are the type of things that we have documented. We don't know enough about them. We know they're not heirs. We don't see how they could be Russia's or China's. And so this is what we can acknowledge. We need that. And that would help us to be able to talk to our witnesses better, to be able to say, you know, do any of these look like one of the craft that you've seen, when we investigate? Instead of them, they don't, people don't know how to file a report, what to say. We have people that talk to me that they're like, "Oh, yeah, I've seen plenty of those, but I thought UFOs were only, flying saucer shape. I didn't know they come in other shapes." And I didn't know that there are those weird, strange lights in the sky that, did all this stuff. So, you know, that opens up more communication when we can discuss it. So, yeah. Um, and I think we need all of that. Um, you know, I think the people who have come forward that are willing to discuss it, that are retired, I think they have helped immensely.
Do you think there's a correlation between nuclear weapons and UFO and ET presence on Earth?
Yes.
Now,
Um,
do you have any? Can you elaborate on that? Do you have any data to, not data, but do you have any stories that, besides Robert Salas, which we know very well?
okay, so it's not just nuclear weapons, it's also anything nuclear related. Um, it's also military assets, military ships, military planes, military submarines, um, ammunition factories, energy production places like gas places, energy, oil places. These all seem to attract them. In Virginia, we have all of those. And so we have a lot of cases involving those places.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I mean, I have specifically investigated cases involving some of those. And that's the tip of the iceberg because the people who live in those places, it's normal to them to see these things. Um, so they don't report most of them. And so
right.
you talk to somebody and you're like, "Oh, well, you need to go talk to these other people because they've also have had the sightings or even abductions related to those places."
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't agree more. Um, and it's a sad fact. I had a gentleman on the show the other day who told this incredible UFO story, um, or sighting with his whole family, right? So his mother, his father, him, and his brother all were in Costa Rica and saw this triangle craft that had three, kind of like the TR-3B Astra, um, without the center light. Just over the horizon, move slowly, tilted, boom. But so not only did it show, um, no signs of propulsion, but it showed instantaneous acceleration. And he said the atmosphere that surrounded him was heavy, very heavy, as well as the fact that, oh God, what was the last part? Oh, it seemed at one point so the reason the craft turned and took off, was because he felt the craft see him. Now, he couldn't see any beings in the craft, but they all got this overwhelming sense that they had been
Mhm.
seen. And,
Yep.
then it, boom. That's a close encounter of the first and second kind put together. And then, um, physical effects. But then I asked, his mother got on the phone during the podcast and confirmed everything he said. And Costa Rica, I've been looking into it. February of 2015, there were other craft seen. So I am putting together a little documentary about it. And just goes to show you that this is a not just a United States thing, but a worldwide phenomena. And
Right.
then I asked, did you report it? No, was their answer.
Right. Right. A lot of people
Why?
are a lot of people are terrified to report it. They are afraid people are gonna come after them, that, they're going to get stalked. Um, you know, that's one reason why a lot of times people on Twitter, they get upset that they can't access our databases. Well, it's a good thing they can't access our databases because these are investigative databases. They have a lot of information in them, and some of that is very personal information. Also, nobody wants to have your street address or GPS or your phone number or email or your name, out in the public for everybody to see. We already know how these pilots and people were treated once their information got out to the public. We have people that dox people. I mean, and so no, I
Yeah,
don't think our databases should be public. And so, as an investigator, I should be able to investigate a case, write the full report, and keep it on the database without people being, able to access that information.
right.
So,
Now,
you know,
as of right now, if I went and I tried to find the case that you are working on right now, I could find that.
no, not really. On
Well,
MUFON,
well,
they have
I'm saying if you had filed the report and the case was over, and the case you were just working on, could I find that in the archive?
not without being an investigator.
So as an investigator, then I could,
Right, you
because
could view it.
I could view it because it might correlate with something I'm working on.
Right, it could. And so, okay, so when somebody goes to the MUFON database and they're trying to look at cases, all they're going to see is the 20 most recent cases pop up that have been reported, and it won't be full information. It'll just be a little snippets of information, but that changes during the day. So if somebody does that and they see the 20 most recent this morning, by now they're going to see a different 20
Right,
because
right,
it's
right,
continually updated.
right, right. Now, okay, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, how do you feel about the nature of abductions? Do you think that that is going to, kind of hinder from the disclosure process? Or do people see past the dark and scary thoughts of alien abduction and they just want the truth out there?
It just depends on who you are. It, you know, there's people that fight against that part that do everything they can against that part and against the people who come out about that part. So,
Because
yeah.
because abductions now the UFO community is already stigmatized as it is, but abductions are even so they're even more stigmatized.
And
UFOs are at one.
the interesting part about that is that there was more scientific information on part of the abductions overall, going back to the beginning with Dr. Mack and other people who specifically studied that, right? Okay, and
Well,
so
the effects of he studied the effects of the patients after the fact.
right, they studied them in detail. Now, we do have Dr. Don Deary, who is in Canada.
And
He's a
doesn't
psycho he's a psychologist and he's an inventor. He's a scientist who has studied this for a long time, and he is one of our consultants for MUFON.
doesn't is he the one that removes the the implants?
No. Mm-mm.
Do you know who that is?
You were thinking probably of Dr. Lear, who died several
Doc
years ago.
Lear, yeah,
Yeah,
Lear. That's the one I was thinking of. What was this?
right.
What was that? What was the other gentleman's name?
Don Derry.
Don. How do you spell
It
that?
his first name is Don, and his last name is Don Derry, Donderi, I believe. I can get you information. He's also
Yeah,
written a book on it.
if you could put me in touch with him, that would be
Okay,
much appreciated. I would love to
okay,
have him on the show.
okay.
Because and again, this is all about networking, like you said,
Mhm.
and I consider you a friend at this point. Um, and I hope to learn from you when I do become an investigator. Because I think I think you're so special and you know f- because you can relate to these people on a different level because not you've experienced what they experienced. So they'll open up to you more. um, do you find that that's the case most of the time? Do you start with a witness saying, like, say you're interviewing a witness and they're a little shy, do you maybe start with your story?
Not for regular investigations, no. Um, but what I do try to emphasize is that, I am an investigator. I've been in this for some time, and that I have heard pretty much everything. I've no, it's not a giggle factor to me. It's not something that I'm going to think people are crazy about, that I'm a listening board, so just share. And I do that whether it's in emails or DMs on Twitter or text or whatever, you know. A lot of times these people just need to be able to get it off their chests, get it off their mind, and share what they went through.
Yeah.
And so, I had a case recently where one of the witnesses, was a little reluctant, and he was a man, which I think is often the case with men, is that they're more, reluctant to
They're
share.
yeah, they're standoffish because we're
Mhm.
we're raised to not
Yeah.
be afraid. We have to be the men, and that
Mhm.
is not the case.
Yeah.
Because we are just as vulnerable as women, but society has taught us that crying is weakness. You know, sharing
Admitting
is
you're
weakness.
scared, yeah.
Yeah. So
So, I often, you know, there's times when I know the man is holding back and he's not gonna share. I've had that recently. Um, and I know that because his wife told me also, you know, but I also had a case where the guy wasn't gonna share until I told him that, and I knew what had happened because the other witness had told me, and I didn't tell him that the witness told me anything. I just told him, "It seems like you're holding back a little bit on this. You can share anything with me, and, that's not an issue," and so he did tell me. So, part of it
so
is being able to establish a rapport of respect.
yeah. And you have an investigative anything, you need to have people skills. Um
Mhm.
because if you don't have people skills, you're not going to get anywhere because people
Right.
aren't going to want to talk to you. So, again, I'm a people person, right? So, I really want to do this, do that work. So, um, do you think it's feasible that the same government that keeps Nancy Pelosi in office also is responsible for a cover up, um, of reverse engineering programs based on otherworldly, um, recovered craft?
Well, it's the people that keep her in office. However, I do see perhaps one of the points you're trying to make. She is from California. There's a lot of defense contractors in California. So I could see how their money could be helping her stay in office if that's
Yes,
considered a bonus.
exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
So, I mean, everything's connected, you can't avoid it, unfortunately. Um, that's probably a big part of what is fighting this to protect their interest and disclosure not coming out. We also have the younger companies that don't have the same pull, who have the younger people and the billionaires who want to expose this because they want to start sharing in the profits. So there's definitely a lot of money in the background fighting over disclosure right now.
So do you do believe that there are factions among the government that are fighting over this?
For many reasons. Also because of the
I'd say it's more.
theological or yeah, there's many
Yeah,
reasons.
I would say because much like Galileo, when he challenged the church and their
Mhm.
beliefs, you know, they put him on house arrest. Um, that's what we're dealing with UFOs and whoever might pilot them. Um, we are not looking through the telescope and seeing that we are not the center of the universe. Um, you know, it's mind-boggling to me. I'm happy that NASA has created its independent study. The government has their study, and then the New York Times basically walks back their 2017 article last week. And I mean, it just seems like we're in a really vulnerable state. But do you think that they could put the genie back in the bottle at this point?
As to who? The
So
government,
could
military?
could the military industrial complex, along with the media, because they're owned by the same people, um, could 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 they put the genie back in the bottle and walk back all the progress that's been made up since 2017?
I would say yes, and they tend to use wars as part of the bargaining chip for that. So we definitely are seeing world war around the world. Um, you know, they're not calling it that at this time, but basically that is what we're seeing. So that is an issue. I will address the New York Times issue. New York Times changed their editors after 2017. And so even Ralph Blumenthal had tried to get another article published through them a year or two ago. And because of the new editorial staff, he couldn't get it approved. So,
They
um,
should they should go work for Politico then, because Politico was the other one that broke that story.
yeah. So all of it, it's all a revolving door. And that's part of the problem too, is that the Pentagon is a revolving door into the military
Do you,
contractors.
do you think they changed editors because of that 2017 article? Do you think
I
that
don't know. I don't
the
want
po-
to I don't want to theorize that. I'm trying to stay away from conspiracy theories as much as possible, but you never know.
is it
So
is it plausible?
it's possible.
Okay, that's all we need to know then. Um, all right. Um, is there material from Roswell out there? This alleged foam-like metal that springs back to um its original shape. Um, did you watch Moment of Contact by James Fox?
Yes.
Um, I I got to go to the premiere, and it was super fun. Um, James, I want to get in touch with him for a show. He's already said basically yes, but it's just a matter of scheduling. But if you remember, the guy that they bring back to the crash site, he mentions a material that is very, very, very similar to
To
testimony
Roswell.
to Roswell. Now, what do you think about that?
I mean, I think that's very likely. Um, I mean, I know I know how this the memory metal, the nitinol, I know how all that came about as far as the naval labs and Battelle and that whole issue. But I have no
What what
doubt
what is the
the
metal
nitinol,
called?
the one that the is been reproduced or um, back engineer is nitinol. And okay, so that is the same thing. They use it for many purposes these days. They use it in medical supplies. They use it in many things. There's YouTube videos of how it functions in processes today. Okay, so
Interesting.
Battelle and the Naval Laboratory were both working on that, supposedly back engineered from what was found in Roswell.
which
And
would make
so,
sense
yeah. So,
because
and mhm,
because the testimony from multiple retired intel officers said that you know the superconductor, the Kevlar, all these things were derived from back engineering.
mhm. Yeah, there's a
So
lot, like fiber optics, those types of
fiber,
things.
yes, that was the other one. Fiber optics. Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah. So, yeah, um, those are all rumored to be back engineered.
Yeah. Why hasn't why hasn't anti-gravity? Now, do you think it just has not been perfected, or do you think that they're holding out on that because that is a weapon that they can use?
Okay, that's a very deadly, subject. Um, a lot of scientists who have worked on anti-gravity have ended up dead, and that's not a that's not a
That's not a
conspiracy
lie.
theory,
That is
that
not a
is a truth.
conspiracy. That is
Right,
a
it's
truth.
true. Yeah. So, if somebody's working on that, it would be best that they not tell people about it because it's not a joking issue. So I would imagine that if that has been done by the government, it's by some military complex that is very closed off because even some of the top um, people that talk um, about these scientific things don't believe that's happened yet. Others do. Look, there's some shysters, I'll say this, that are out there who claim that they've done that. And these, they're like garage scientist type guys. You
Right.
know, that's ridiculous.
And you know what I find preposterous is, you know, even guys like Avi Loeb. I'm in Boston. He's in Harvard. Um, Avi Loeb even writes a paper about how Oumuamua could be this, whether it be, you know, a spacecraft or a piece of a spacecraft or a light sail from an advanced craft. And he gets ridiculed by mainstream science. And all he was doing was proposing because this was not an object that we had ever seen before in this new age. So, saying, some of the theories that they came up with were so impossible and improbable that, you know, to to question him and to ridicule him for coming up with something like that just goes to show you that mainstream science is not right all the time.
Okay, well, if you go to medical science, the doctors who were putting out that there were bacteria and viruses responsible for a lot of disease and such, they were completely ridiculed and harassed. Um, so science has a background of doing this to the people that are forward thinking and right on what they're talking about.
Much like the church in that era with
Right.
Galileo. Again, back to that whole thing. um you know I just in your you're 60. How old you say? I'm sorry, I forgot already.
65.
You're 65 years old. Do you think that disclosure, actual disclosure, is going to happen in the next year or two?
I think everybody has a different definition of disclosure. Okay.
I'm so happy you said that, because after this, I would like to hear your definition of disclosure.
Okay.
So
So I
two
think
part two part answer.
the government in part has already disclosed. You take the DI report, you take Avril Haines that was at the National Cathedral, talking about it openly, in the setting that she was in. She didn't mince words. She publicly discussed it and the options. Um, you have Congress people that are coming out talking about this subject. It's been disclosed. What most people want is for the president to come out and say, this is all real. And, who knows?
Not going
Maybe,
to happen.
yeah, I was going to say maybe, but not likely. So, I mean, Obama has recently said a lot more about it. And,
Yeah, I saw that
you know,
interview. That was awesome.
yeah. And then when Biden was asked about it that one time,
He
I
was
mean,
like,
but
ah.
he said, go ask Obama, you know?
Yeah. What an asshole.
So he could barely get off the stage fast enough and take his earplug out, which was interesting. Um, so yeah,
It
but and you
also,
have all
it
these.
also, it actually, in hindsight, you just made me think of something. In hindsight, that was probably a message by the United States government to Obama saying, go ask Obama, because clearly he's a loudmouth right now. Um, you know, you know, I'm not gonna say anything. I can't get off the stage fast enough. I'm not answering this shit. But go ask Obama. Clearly, he's
Mhm.
been talking about it. So that could have been a dig.
Yeah, that could have been kind of a let him do it.
Yeah. Um. Now, for you, what would disclosure be?
Well, I think it's pretty much what
Capital
we
D disclosure.
capital D disclosure would probably be. I don't know. I take what we have already done as a good disclosure, I guess, but I don't think we're going to ever get it. What we would hope and dream that a president would come out, that it'd be splashed across the headlines, just like when Apollo landed on the moon. I don't think we're going to get that. Um, you know, I mean, even if the UN took the lead and said, this is real, I think
Right.
that would be an important step for the world to do that. So, yeah.
Would you like to hear my theory about how
Okay.
disclosure is going to happen? And I think
Okay.
how so I want to say this first. Disclosure is a process. Lou Elizondo said this in the conference when they announced to the Stars Academy and debuted those videos. I agree with him there. But in my opinion, disclosure is a process, and it is being unfolded slowly around us right now. You look at the media, they're covering UFOs at an unprecedented event. We've had the first hearings in 50 years on the subject. NASA, its own independent study. We're on the heels of, uh, uh, you know, OSAP and ATIP. We still don't know if ATIP was just a nickname or was an actual office, but the Hubble telescope I think was going to be the original way to do it. But with the James Webb, these amazing pictures have been coming out. I think they're going to use the James Webb Space Telescope. They're going to capture something and they're going to release it to the public in NASA's independent study. And then those people in the independent study will contact the UAP task force or whatever it's going to be known as going forward, Arrow, whatever. Then the representative from Arrow, the representative from the NASA, and a representative from the White House, not the president. The president will not be the one to do it. It'll be a representative from the White House. And all three of those people will give the news on the White House lawn that it's happening. That is my educated guess.
Okay.
What do you think?
It's completely possible.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they would have to announce it and run. Okay.
Well,
because they're not going to want to answer the press.
Yeah, they're definitely because but we know that the government is good at showing you what's in this hand, but not in this one, because this one is the one you need to pay attention to, right? So the government is going to use this as a way to look how transparent we're being. Look all this and hope that we don't start asking questions about things in the past, because everybody's going to be so caught up with disclosure that it won't be for a couple of years at least before people are like, wait a second. Wait, was Roswell real?
What if we're running out of time and they have to tell us, because if they don't tell us, something worse is going to happen and we're not prepared for that?
Well, I will say this on that subject. Kevin Day. Do you know who Kevin Day is? He is a good friend of mine. I'm actually going to stay with him next month. And we're going to do some, because I'm making a documentary, and I want him to be included because this message I'm about to say. He told me that his life, when that radar screen started doing what it did, and he did everything in the books to reset it, restart it, and they were still there. And these things were dropping from a minimum of 80,000 feet, because the Spy 1 radar, it starts at 80,000 feet. So these things were probably dropping from way above 80,000 feet, but we picked them up at 80,000, dropping to the sea level, and then back up and forth, back around, shooting back and forth. When he had that experience and then was laughed at, ridiculed, was basically driven out of the military, forced retirement after a 20-year career, one day ruined everything. And then he went through a mental break where he now knew ETs existed, and he was a skeptic before that. His whole world changed. And it was, he lost his wife, he lost his children, he lost his job. People thought he was going insane. He lost a bunch of weight. He was just obsessed with finding the answers. What if that happens to every single person on the planet at the same time? That's what he ended the sentence with. And I fucking, part of my language, I sat back in my chair and he had tears coming out of his eyes. He was
So,
not joking.
no, but I'll tell you, having the government admit it, having more and more people around you admit it, having doctors and people that can be looked up to admit it goes a huge way, because everybody who goes through this has to process it. And yes, it takes time to process it, but it's hardest on those of us who had no one to say any of this was real.
Right.
I mean, that you deal with all the other issues for years, for decades. And, people do commit suicide. People do things, but it's because everybody around them is telling them they're crazy and none of this is real. And so that's the problem. That's the issue. I mean, and that's also the issue why a lot of the military guys have such bad trauma, is because they can't discuss any of it.
Yeah.
They're not
Yeah.
allowed to. They're not,
Yeah.
some of them can't even talk about it with their military doctors
Well,
because,
now
yeah.
now they've implemented the the form that you can fill out, and you can't be, you know, there's no penalty for reporting it anymore. But people are still scared of reporting because of the ridicule they've seen in the past. So, you know, MUFON, you guys have, let's say, 10,000 cases submitted per year internationally. How many do you think that aren't submitted?
Oh, I would say I would say many times. I mean, I'm serious. I could say 80 times, 100 times more that they're not submitted. And particularly when you have people that are experiencers and have repeat incidents completely, they're not reporting. So yeah, there's just too many. Yeah, I am on the experiencer resource team. And so I do get cases specifically just because people wanted to talk about it or to see what kind of ways MUFON can recommend help. So I see those also.
Wow, what an asset you are. Thank you so much for the work that you do.
Thank
No,
you.
seriously, seriously. Um, what 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 is your favorite thing about being a MUFON investigator?
Um, I just want I want all the cases. I'm greedy. I want all the cases. I love that the cases are so unique and different, and it doesn't matter how many times they're similar, they're completely different, and there's just so much that I learned through them and doing, the different locations, talking to the different people. It's all gathering information. Um, it's really hard to understand this if we're not talking directly to the people who are experiencing it, seeing it, if we don't go through the research for it.
Right,
So,
right.
for instance, okay, some of the things people report as orbs, those are not all orbs, and there's many types of orbs, but with forensics on some of the images, I've been able to distinctly see the shapes of ships. Once I do the forensics, the like the rotation film or fog or plasma, whatever, around some of these, they're to disguise what's there. Okay, so there's many types of orbs, and so but I would never have known that, or even believed it if I hadn't have done the research.
So, are is it so I assume it's one thing when you go into it, you do the research, and you find a case that's extraordinary, unexplainable, at least by your standards. Um, that's got to be a good feeling, right? But the other side of it, when you go and you find something that's obviously a misidentification, is a little bit disheartening.
It depends, but yeah, sometimes it can be. Also, the ones that get away, there's some really good cases that are submitted, but the people are scared or paranoid to talk about them. And so that pretty much shuts down a case when you can't, I can only investigate everything up to that point. Um, I had a recent case where somebody was terrified and of something that they saw, and so they never would talk to me about it, and it would have been a monumental case if it could have been completely investigated.
Right. And that sucks. That's gotta suck so much when
Mhm.
you're like, this is an amazing case, but these people just won't talk to us.
Right.
Like we can. Have you ever? Have you ever said? Do you bring cameras? What do you bring with you on an investigation?
Okay, if we go out to investigate on a site, then you always have to have somebody else with you. You can't go out by yourself. If you're
Okay.
going on a
Another
property,
investigator.
preferably another investigator, but we're short-handed. So a lot of times we have to go with our spouse or, somebody
Right.
like that.
Right.
Um,
Right.
if you're going on somebody's property, you have to have their written agreement ahead of time. There's a lot of legal issues that we have to cover. So going on site is very complex for many reasons. But yes, so I mean, but even going to a public place, yeah, you take your camera. Depends on what you're trying to determine. I mean,
I
I know hotspots in Virginia that I'm told people see stuff there all the time, and it's the locals they know, but they also don't usually report it,
right.
because it's normal.
Right.
That's what
Right.
a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of this stuff, especially in rural areas in decades past, they just considered it normal. They didn't
Yeah.
consider it
Yeah.
anything else.
Are there any tribes in the area of you?
Not far.
So, do they have you ever investigated a case having to do with that? Because they tend to have relationships with, the star people or some variation of those kind of gods.
It's very possible that the local ones do. I've never had anyone contact me for that. Um, I mean, that could be how I'm involved in it because of my family past. So that's possible. Um, but a lot of times, also from what I'm hearing from people that I know in the West that know, such individuals, um, that, it's normal. It's part of, it's again, it's not considered abnormal to see this kind of
Right.
stuff.
And and
And
and
so, yeah.
that's the way it is in like Brazil now.
Mhm.
um People in Brazil, like, it's just part of their culture, and like they're like,
Right.
oh, I don't know if you ever heard the story of the mayor that had an investigative journalist come out to one of the lakes, and you know he was being dead serious when he said it to her. He was like, the UFO, because he knew that she was a UFO investigative researcher, um, and you know, he with a straight face he said the UFO keeps coming down and taking our water out of the lake, draining the lake. Like all of our farmers use this water. I want you to do something about it. And she was like, I I I I I investigate UFO sightings and cases. I don't have a contact with them. Um, but basically, he goes, wait, do you not have UFOs in the United States? And she was like, we do, but it's not like the government hasn't opened up about it. Like, it's still a secret. And he goes, oh, here we see them every day, like all the time. They're taking our water. Like I want them to stop taking our water. Please tell them to stop. And she was like, I can't help. She ended
The
up
places,
reporting it.
see, there are places in the U.S. have had water dry up overnight too, and it's not just here; it's other countries. And yes, oftentimes there are UFOs that are seen. So we don't know what they're doing.
There's definitely a correlation between water,
Mhm,
nuclear, and UFOs.
right. So we don't know, of course, they're what is sending them where they're going. We don't know their propulsion. We don't know what else they could be using water for.
Well, the
And
water could
yeah,
be the water could be used to cool whatever propulsion
right,
system they are using, right?
right, right,
So that's my theory because now they're classifying UAP, so UFOs, or now what was called UAP, now they're calling them trans something, tra- trans
transmedium.
transmedium craft, which can
That makes
fly
more
through.
sense to me.
Yeah, because not only are you talking about, because USOs, UFOs, and UAP, like they, it's all the same thing. We needed something that
Right.
encompassed all of the phenomena.
Well, see, they also can go through mountains and everything. We have many, many stories and cases of
Where they
these
fly
things.
right into a mountain,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so transmedium is the best term because they can go through anything.
With and it's seamless. It's not like, you know, they hit the water and slow down. It's like the water's not even there. Like
Right.
and it's like the mountain's not there. It's incredible. It's incredible. I want to see. Have you ever seen a UFO?
Yes.
Like just in the sky, not one that abducted you.
Yes.
What did it look like?
Well, there's different shapes. They're definitely the disc shapes. So, yeah. I mean, a lot of them that we're still getting reports of are disc shaped. So that's definitely.
Now,
And many of my newer cases, we're seeing multiple craft, we're seeing multiple different crafts together.
together in a formation.
Together. So I had cases where there's multiple triangles, cases where there's spears and cubes together,
Right,
where
where
there's
they're
orbs and cubes,
but they're flying together in formation.
or in the same area of the sky.
Okay, okay, okay. And
I
you
have
know,
one that's a tic tac and a saucer.
wow.
Mhm.
And that could make sense because the famous um gimbal video, the radio command says there's a whole fleet of them on ASA. ASA, for anyone who doesn't know, is so when you're recording radar and so when you record radar, you're also recording on your ASA. It's simultaneously, no matter what. And on ASA, you have a bigger picture of the whole. It's not just what the FLIR is seeing, but what the spy radar is seeing, what everything is seeing. And they're like, on the ASA, there's a whole fleet of them, but all we see in the gimbal video is the gimbal. So a bunch of smaller craft were accompanying the gimbal. The gimbal looked like a saucer craft, and the other ones were Tic Tac crafts. So there you go, right there.
Yeah, everybody kept saying the gimbal, the gimbal craft. And, it was like, it's a saucer.
Yeah, it's a saucer.
I
It's
mean,
it's lenticular. It's a lenticular disc, and it's just got the aura around it. But they nicknamed it the gimbal, and that's how we know it. So,
yeah,
but it's definitely the classic, and then it rotates. Like
yeah.
that should be the smoking gun right there. That's it. That's it. Nothing that we have known can do that.
Well, at least that works like that. There's been
Yeah.
prototypes in the past and
Yes,
stuff, but they didn't.
but to be
Yeah,
able to rotate midair and not
right.
lose any altitude, because usually when you're in an aircraft and you have to make a turn like that, you have to lose altitude in order to push up, right? Because you're using physics and aerodynamics. But this craft, just against the wind, 120 knots against the wind, rotates and doesn't even it's not even phased.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And people still aren't taking it seriously, or as serious as they should. So before I let you go, because we're at the hour and 43 mark, I want to hear your what. There are two questions that have pondered humans for ever, since the first thought crossed our minds. What happens after we die, and are we alone in the universe? By answering one of these questions, we may have the opportunity to answer the second one. Now, if we answer the UFO issue, are we alone? And they're that much more advanced than us. Maybe they do know, or they're more privy to what this is. What is all of this? What's the meaning of it all? What do you think about that sentiment?
I think to an extent that's true. I think there's plenty of evidence for what happens after we pass. There's been a lot of scientists and doctors investigating that for a long time. We have the near-death experience and all those other cases. So there's a lot of actual scientific research on all of this and data, but people ignore it. They
Right,
just
because
choose not to. Yeah. They
because
don't want to believe it.
they don't want to believe it, because if they don't see it, out of sight, out of mind. But
Right.
people like us, we want to know. We want to understand, because that's part of who we are. The drive, that drive for truth and for meaning, because we are not just here. And I hate when people compare us to ants when it comes to aliens. For lack of a better word, I don't like using the word alien, but extraterrestrials and us, people say we're ants to that whole comparison. We are not ants. We are intelligent life who have dominated a planet and basically terraformed it into our own paradise, if you will. Last time I checked, ants didn't do that. So the fact that, if aliens showed up, they wouldn't care about us, that's so stupid. Of course they care about us. Look at what we are. Life is so precious, so miraculous that when it is achieved to the degree that we have achieved it, it is special. Do you think that they are here because they played a direct part in our development, Linda?
I believe in part that's true.
Okay, in part. Can you elaborate?
Well, in part, as far as one reason why they're here. But yes, I do believe that they had a part in our development. So yeah.
Okay. Um, Linda, you are amazing. You are a wealth of knowledge. And this will not be the only time I ever have you on this show because I just think you're absolutely incredible. Where are you? You're in Virginia, you said?
Yes, and I apologize for all the sound effects from my husband's work phone. He didn't
Oh
take it with
no! Don't apologize. Don't apologize. Um, that with the pandemic, I think we all grew numb to that kind of stuff. Dogs jumping in the frame and everything like that. Not everybody has a podcast studio in their house like I do.
right.
So yeah. Linda, where can they find you? And on social media, where can they find you? And do you have any books or anything that you'd like to promote?
I don't have any books at this point. I do have some that are, I'd say, incubating. I'm on Twitter as Linda LYNDA_Katera KATERRA. I'm also under the same now on the Mastodon, whatever that's is. I'm not planning on switching off Twitter. A lot of people are, so I just started an account there so that I don't lose contact with people when they do
Um,
switch.
I'm sorry. What?
Yeah,
What is what is what is Mastodon?
I know, right? This is weird, kind of like Twitter. It's some new thing. It's kind of weird. Um so yeah, more and more people are talking about switching, but I'm not planning on leaving Twitter. And so you can find me there. I do have a website which I will be updating and try to write more on, and that's Linda LYNDA Thompson .info. And so I'm there also. And I do write some articles on Medium. I have a paper posted to academia.
Okay. And I'm sorry. Could you repeat the website?
It's
www.
right. It's Linda LYNDA Thompson .info.
And you do blog posts there and stuff.
Yeah, not enough, but I do. I
Well,
do
would
have
you?
some interesting things there.
Okay. I think I got it right. Is that? Nope. Nope.
Take
Two D's. What the hell? www.lyndaThompson .info. I'm sorry, Linda.
That's okay.
I want to make sure that we get these up. So
Okay.
Linda Thompson dot. So guys, check out Linda Thompson on her website where she does blog posts about the cases she's working on and other research that she is involved in. www.lindathompson.info. Again, that is www.lindathompson.info. And you can find her on Twitter at Linda_Katerra, Katerra. Guys, I can't thank you enough. For our audio audience, our podcast as of right now is in the top list for Massachusetts, and I am extremely, extremely grateful. And we're just keeping growing. Our podcast is blowing up on Apple and Spotify and Google and all those places. So, Linda, thank you so much for coming on. Guys, to you, do you have any final messages for? So, if you had one thing to say to someone who didn't know anything about the UFO subject, what would you say?
Oh gosh. They really need to study up on it. I mean, they could start with MUFON. There's other places, obviously, but
Yeah,
it's so much information. You just have to choose wisely.
right, right. And if you want, I'm gonna be making a list.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna be making a video, and I write for the GWW, and I write about UFOs and stuff like that as well. I'm going to be writing and doing a video about my top 10 UFO documentaries and TV shows or specials that I think all newcomers should watch in preparation for getting into the subject. So
Okay.
that'll be coming soon. Linda, again, thank you.
Thank you. I was there in Massachusetts for the blizzard of 78.
Oh
I
my
was
God. Oh my
I was
God.
pregnant at the time,
Tell me
and
more.
my first husband was stationed at Fort Devens. And so, yeah, we saw UFOs up there while we were there. So, yep. I was there
Wow.
almost a year.
Wow. All right, guys. Till next time, my name's Ty. This has been Total Disclosure brought to you by Pop Culture Corner.